So, Charlie, you've got a very exciting new podcast that you're going to tell us about, Willy Willy Harry Stee, which is a journey through the monarchy. Could you maybe tell us a little bit more about it?
Yes, well, Willy Willy Harry Stee is the beginning of a rhyme, a mnemonic that I learnt at school in the 1960s. Is a way of remembering all the British monarchs from William the Conqueror up to the present day. And in lockdown, I kind of relearnt the rhyme, and then I thought, actually, I want to know who all these people were, what they did and how they fitted together, how we got from William the Conqueror to Elizabeth II, as it was at the time, with Charlie waiting in the wings. And I just thought this is such an amazing story, and it's such an extraordinary story. Now, I am neither a Republican nor a royalist, but I think the story of the royal family, it's very strange and dysfunctional on many levels, of this idea of, and I did get quite fascinated, and then, how these people sit on the throne, what right they have to be there, and why we kind of accept it. And it is an amazing story of murder, patricide, fratricide, cutting people's heads off, massive civil wars, all to see who's going to sit on the throne. Famously, George R.R. Martin based Game of Thrones on our own royal history, particularly through like the Wars of the Roses, where they're all killing each other to get onto the throne. And I thought, I want to share that with the world. And then, when Elizabeth died and Charles was come to the throne for the coronation, I thought that would be the perfect point to launch it. To say, if you want to make sense of why we're having this bizarre medieval ceremony where Charles is being anointed with holy oils and becomes a sort of divinely appointed figure to rule over us, then this is the story.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, there's so much drama, murder, violence, sex, intrigue, everything's in there. Are there any particular standout characters among the monarchs and their royal families and people involved?
Well, what's been really interesting for me is, like most people in the country, you kind of know bits and pieces of it. We all know Henry VIII, William the Conqueror, Henry V because of Shakespeare. But it's all the other ones that I didn't really know that much about before I started the series. I mean, the series, it's in chronological order. You get basically one monarch an episode. I talk about them, and then I get a guest historian on to talk about them with more authority. But yeah, for me, finding out about some of the less well-known ones has been really interesting. People like Henry III, who was the son of King John, wicked King John, from the Robin Hood stories. He was one of our longest reigning monarchs, but most people know absolutely nothing about him. But he sort of carried on in the style of his father, upsetting everybody, and he had a massive civil war against Parliament, essentially.
And you mentioned some guests that you have on. You have some guest historians. You've got some fantastic guests. Could you maybe tease a few of those for us?
Well, I was very pleased for the first episode, the sort of introductory episode. I got Tom Holland, who I've known for many years because I really like his books, and I met him at a do, and he and his brother James Holland run a big history festival in Chalk Valley, which I've been doing talks at over the years. And so I was very pleased to get him on, because the Rest is History podcast is one of the most successful podcasts in the country. And he's an extraordinary guy who knows everything. I got Charles Spencer on, which was amazing, as someone who is actually connected to the royal family, being Diana's brother. Tracy Borman, who does a lot of TV stuff, and she is quite interesting with the guests, because most historians are quite specific in what they know about. They'll know about a sort of 20-year bit of history. So it's quite interesting getting generalists on. Ian Mortimer, who's written lots of more general books over history, to get a kind of wider perspective. Dan Jones. Helen Castor's one of my favourites.
Yeah, very renowned. Lastly, I was going to ask, where can we find your new podcast?
You can find my podcast wherever you find all your other podcasts. Just put in podcasts and it will come up. It's not specific to any platform. So you can listen to it. And yeah, people do seem to have been genuinely enjoying it. And I get a lot of people saying, I didn't know this stuff. I always felt I missed a week in school of history. And actually fitting it all together, people have found quite interesting.
So there you go. Catch up on your history with
Catch up on
Charlie
your
Higson.
history. It's more interesting than you expect.